Oh, Nick, I'm really excited to sit and chat with you today. I've been really looking forward to this all week because obviously I love the message and the work you're doing. But honestly, it was two Instagram posts that really have a special place in my heart of yours that I just think are just incredible. And the first one, I was out shopping and I was just in a queue and I was just, you know, how you kind of killing, like you're just bored, you're looking for something to do. And I saw your brilliant post. It was a carousel and it was literally like, there are two stories about me here and both of them are true. So instantly I'm like, ooh. And I looked and like the first one, it's amazing. And then the second one, I was like, oh, how many of us can relate to this? So to start us off, I'd love to talk about that amazing post and your incredible journey that has led you to where you are doing the amazing work that you are today.
No, Flic. Well, look, firstly, thank you for inviting me on your amazing podcast. I deliberately chose the Friday afternoon slot because I wanted this to be the best thing of my week, and I think it's going to be. I can't wait. So, yes, that Instagram post. I think for me, in my own life journey, learning to develop the confidence to be both vulnerable, open, and honest as a man has been the more I've been able to learn to do that, the more balanced, the better I've felt about myself. And what I've come to learn over doing the work that I do is that everybody has two versions of their own life story. And we have that kind of LinkedIn version of here's all my achievements.
Yeah.
And then we have that kind of version that can sit in the shadows, in the shame swamp, the things about ourselves and the experiences that we've had that actually were really challenging and maybe we're a bit embarrassed or maybe even feel shame about. So I wanna bring that into the light. And that post was just on a whim, really, and I'm really glad that it spoke to you. But yeah, the first version of the story is, I grew up in a largely kind of privileged area in Hertfordshire, just north of London, in the 70s and 80s, and and I was brought up in the Catholic faith, and that was really important to me as a young person. And it became quite quite obvious quite quickly that I was talented at football. So between the ages of sort of 10 and 19, I represented clubs like Tottenham Hotspur and Luton Town and Watford and Reading and Stevenage. And I actually played with or against some players that went on to be some of the best players of my generation, such as David Beckham, such as Kevin Phillips, who was the last English top scorer of the Premier League. I played against the Dutch internationals, Clarence Seedorf and Patrick Kluivert, who were big, big names. Bruce Dyer at Watford, who was Britain's first £1 million teenage player, and Robert Page, the current Wales manager. And they were amazing experiences, but it just didn't quite work out for me. But I had other strings to my bow, and I was able to go to university and explore my faith by taking theology. After my degree, I taught English in Milan for a while, and then got headhunted for a job in the travel industry in London, and I worked there for 5 years. And then I pursued music, and that brought me to Nottingham. And then I worked for Eon for 10 years in various leadership roles. And that was when I began to get really curious about wellness and about leadership and about theme of this show, sort of burnout. And then kind of as I entered my 40s and beyond, I really sort of really took an interest in it. So that when the pandemic happened, I thought, I can go on as I'm going and I'll be fine,
Yeah.
or I can really look to take a bit of a gamble and a chance and do something that could be soul led and as meaningful as it gets. And that's what I did. And that's what I've been doing now full time for just over 2 years. So that's
Brilliant.
version one.
Version one. And, for me, sat there looking at that post, like you feel it in your body, don't you? You're like, oh, that's really cool. Like, represented England at 18, and you did your degree at Oxford, and and
Yeah.
you're like a homeowner in London, managerial role, married, you release your album. I was just like, oh, when you're reading it, I am me included, and I've seen all facets of life, bloody hell. You get that like, oh, this is cool. Good for him.
Mm.
And it's just so brilliant that you then swipe and you see that second reel, and you're like, viscerally, everything changed when I was reading that one.
Look, and I'm absolutely, and I'm going to go on and explain that in a bit more detail in a second. But I just wanted to pause for a moment because when you reflected back to me some of those achievements that I missed out when I was recounting it myself, it was because I found it so hard to sit in the feelings of those achievements as the person that achieved them, as
Oh,
even as I was sharing with you then. Because
yeah.
when you were reflecting it back, the things that I actually wrote in that post, I was like, yeah, I did do that. And actually, that's pretty effing amazing. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? And I
Yes.
was able to feel it, but I couldn't generate that for myself in the moment. I just wanted to notice and share that as we were talking then.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, the second version is, yeah, there were many good things about my childhood, but there were three things in particular that I really struggled with. And the first was being brought up in the Catholic faith because of the way that faith expressed itself as I saw it and felt it as a young person, which was very much like I remember as a child feeling really nervous and almost as if every moment of every day I was walking a tightrope.
Mm.
And that tightrope would either lead me to praise and feeling good about myself if my caregivers, and I don't just mean my parents, teachers in school, etc., felt that what I was doing was worthy and useful and honorable. But often, for reasons that I couldn't quite understand, the opposite happens, and my behavior was deemed kind of too much, or I'm too cheeky, or I need to behave, and I really felt shamed for that. And when I got curious and asked questions about it as a kid, I got completely shut down and very often punished. And back in the 70s and 80s, punishment often meant being physically struck, both at home and in school, back in those days. I remember as a very young primary school kid being told off for accidentally breaking a plant pot and having to kneel in the head mistress's, who was a nun, office with Bibles, honestly holding them up as penance for breaking like God's plant pot or whatever. And I'm laughing about it, but actually I also want to take a moment just to check in with that little version of myself and let them know that it's okay, because there's strong feelings. But
Hugely.
yeah, so that was a big thing, kind of that all or nothing. I'm either good or I'm bad.
Okay.
And I don't quite understand why necessarily I'm one or the other. The second thing about my childhood that I really struggled with was my dad taught in the primary school that I was in. So there was an added layer to that where anything good I did was because my dad was the teacher at school.
Yeah.
What I also observed, even as a prepubescent boy, was that the dad I knew at school was really jovial and popular and charismatic and engaging. And at home, not all the time. And there was a lot of stuff there that was great, and I love him to bits. But there was a lot of anger, and there was a lot of frustration, and there was a lot of walking on eggshells around his mood and adjusting how I was to meet the needs as I saw it of however he was.
Yeah.
So that had a big impact. And then football had a massive impact on me. But again, that was very much about you must be this and this and this, and you must be at your best all the time. And anything less than that, there was always that risk of rejection. And actually, in football, I experienced rejection so many times in so many different ways that I chose to leave my dream of football at 19 because I had had enough. I was just done, absolutely done. I was rejected by Watford, having been there for 3 or 4 years, about 6 weeks before my GCSEs. So while I was meant to be revising and working towards my GCSEs, I I was on trial at any club that would take me. And I did get signed by Reading, which was great. But then unfortunately, into that experience, 6 weeks into that experience, having left home at 16 to move to a new town, I got injured, and I was injured for 8 months. And I experienced during that period bullying and some quite physical rough treatment. Some of it was of a very personal nature. At best, I would call it hazing, and at worst, I'd call it assault. And I actually got relieved from my contract. I got sacked, and then I had to come home, tail between my legs, and try and rebuild my life. And I think I was just burnt out from constantly performing in one way or another by the time I got to 19.
Yeah.
So, do you know what I mean?
That's what I'm hearing. That's what I'm hearing, because obviously I'm currently doing the Inner You program with Josh, and you and Jess are both facilitating. And so I'm learning about this inner child stuff. And I'm listening to you, Nick, and I'm just thinking, oh my God, like that little boy, your dad is there, the headmaster. Now as a parent, I know, like, and actually I've been in a situation where I've worked all day with children and then come home to my own. And so I know how knackering that would have been for your dad. It like just exhausting to just be, there and then come home and you just want to kind of, be yourself. But it came at a cost to your family, didn't it? And you would have read, like you would have learned from a very young age to read the situation. And you just think, and then that lovely little Nick went from there to football. And I know when you think about his little nervous system, that hard wiring wouldn't know the difference between a lost game and life or death. Like that little Nick had to carry so much, didn't he?
I know. And when you say that, it's only probably in the last 2 or 3 years that I can actually hold that myself and actually agree with you.
Yeah.
And that's because of a lot of the privilege that I did enjoy. It was almost like, oh, I had such a great childhood. How could any of the problems that I went on to have as an adult be rooted in childhood? Does that make sense? I think there's a lot of people similar to me that almost where duality can't exist. So in that example where you quite rightly said, my dad, you can resonate with my dad being absolutely knackered and not being at his best as a dad because of all those pressures at school. So can I. Like I can hold compassion for my father for doing the best that he could in all the roles he had to fulfill in his life. I can do that now as an adult and someone that's nearly 50 myself, that's felt similar pressures myself. But what I've learned is that actually I can honor how that little me felt and really tune into that. And that's okay too.
Yeah. And I think that's so important for people listening, because it's rare we come to that realization ourselves without doing any work or without having anyone supporting us. And even better, someone professionally like yourself to hold the mirror and be like, because when you said like duality, it can exist. It's only the last couple of years that I've started to see this as well, Nick, because it's so innate within us to be, that black or white thinking, it's
Yes.
not easy, is it?
No, it's not easy at all. And I'm still learning every day.
Yeah.
It's important to say that as well.
Yeah.
And that's okay. That's part of this process. And I think that's why developing self-compassion can kind of widen the net to allow us to become capable of emotionally holding all of these conflicting things at the same time.
Yeah.
That's really
It is. It is. So that lovely little Nick, like I'm just thinking of his little nervous system, and he's, you're getting all of these kind of messages, and we mold and we shape ourselves, don't we? We do it. And so then you went to do teaching in Milan, and then you were headhunted.
Yeah, so that was after and this is the thing, because when I released myself from the shackles and the pressure of football and went to university and had that experience, I had no idea who I was.
Yeah.
And I didn't know this at the time, but I had no self-worth. I had no intrinsic self-worth or sense of identity. So when I wasn't getting that from football anymore, and I literally started to try and seek it in other ways subconsciously, mostly through either sexual encounters,
Yeah.
which is what I spent a lot of time at university doing,
Yeah.
or numbing out from my emotional experiences and that lack of self-worth.
Yeah.
And that could be, drink, drugs, whatever. I experimented a lot with all of that stuff. So, so yes, it's true that I was able to get a degree just about.
Mm.
The Oxford part, by the way, is an absolute fluke. And it's what I say by that is it's a fluke because in the transition period between the old polytechnics being removed by Thatcher's government and everything becoming a university, my college, which up to that point had been a teacher training college, got swept into Oxford University for 7 years. So for those 7 years, people that graduated got an Oxford degree. But I
Right.
wouldn't say I really went to Oxford, if that makes sense. It's
Yeah. Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
So this is what I mean by duality. It's true.
Yes.
But for me, it isn't what people perceive when they hear you've got an Oxford degree. And I want to be honest about that as well.
Yeah. But I'm listening to this and I'm like, oh my gosh, your life journey all makes sense when this unfolds.
Mhm.
Like it's almost like you were destined to be exactly where you are right now doing your work, because I'm listening, I'm thinking, oh wow, like even that had a duality. Everything did. Because we tend to think, don't we, like we look on the outside and we kind of think, oh my gosh, like he's done so well for himself and he had this experience and he's done this, and you did a lot by a very young age.
Yes.
But also that came at a cost to you, and the fact that you
No,
were like, you just didn't have that self-identity.
no, and it cost me in my 20s. That's the truth of it. Yes, it's true that when I came back from Milan and was working in first of all Greenwich and then Hammersmith, and got married and bought the first house by 24 and had my first managerial role by 25. All of that is true.
Yeah.
It's also true that I was habitually smoking weed every day. I fell in love, or what I thought was falling in love, with somebody very quickly who asked me to marry them. And I said yes. In less than 3 months, we eloped.
Okay. Yeah.
We didn't tell anyone. And within 3 months of getting married, she'd had an affair and the relationship started to get quite abusive. But I didn't know how to deal with that
Yeah.
because I'd already become a people pleaser from the experiences that I'd had. I had no sense of self-worth. So I thought, well, I must deserve this. I just need to do better. All of that conditioning from childhood, if I do better, we'll stop arguing. I won't get hit. I won't get cheated on. Do you know what I mean? It just started to play out. Um, so, so again, that duality, which you've really astutely picked up on, I absolutely am glad I had all of these experiences sitting here talking to you today, because it makes me the coach that I am and able to be of service to others
Yes.
in a really authentic way and to understand people's own experiences in a way that not every person can. So I'm really grateful for that. But I also have to honor the pain that I felt, and that those younger versions of me, I've had to work on a personal level to heal and continue to do so.
Yeah.
So I had my second real burnout was when that relationship eventually ended, and my nervous system could begin to relax. But um, I may even have had yeah, definitely some kind of episode, because when 9/11 happened, I was working in the travel industry and our clients were from America. We had 3 flights coming over that morning out of JFK, and we saw it happening unfold. For me, having gone through, it was like the event that I just disassociated from everything and shut down,
Right.
and I couldn't go to work, and I just couldn't understand my place in the world or the world in general. Everything just fell apart. And I had such a mistrust at that stage at 26 of everyone and everything. I literally left my job and I sold my house and I walked into the bank and I took my money out in cash
Right.
to try and feel safe.
Yeah.
And I had to, I thought at that moment that what I needed was to go get back onto football. I thought this is all of this horrible stuff's happened because I gave up football. I need to go back to football. But that wasn't the answer either. So I went back to my parents' house and proceeded to spend all that money
Yeah.
numbing out
Yeah.
until it had almost gone, at which point something came out of nowhere inside me and just said, I need help. And that was the first time I asked for help when I was 27. And I saw a therapist for the first time at
Yeah.
27.
Yeah.
And the stories I'm telling you now, I first began to speak my truth at that age.
Yeah.
And that had a profound impact,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know?
It it's interesting, isn't it? Because, I'm listening to this, like I've done this. There's going to be anyone listening to this. Let's face it, anyone human, Nick. Um,
Mm,
Even when you're in those dark times and, you kind of feel like you're flailing, God, you're just trying your bloody best. Like I'm listening,
mm,
like I'm just thinking, like you would have seen like the whole 9/11 thing, and then you had that instinct, that reaction to go right, and you were just trying your best. Right, I'm going to sell a
mm,
house. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to keep myself as safe as possible. And for those who are hard on themselves, because people who burn out
mm.
are usually quite hard on themselves. For those who are hard
Yeah.
on themselves, but those who are just like, oh, I messed this up, and I've got to do
No,
better. If if I'm a better person, I'll make this relationship work. I'm just listening. I'm like, oh God, we're all
no.
just bloody trying our best, and we have to. I love how you constantly remind people you work with and people of the self-compassion piece.
Mm.
It's so necessary. It's vital. It's everything, isn't it?
It is absolutely everything, Flic, for me.
Yeah.
It's the beacon that whenever I have moments, which I do, where I find myself completely off course, emotionally or circumstantially, whatever that means in that moment, it's like a beacon that just allows me to come back to myself.
Yeah.
And that isn't necessarily an easy journey, far from it very often. But it's like I don't know, it's a superpower. I really believe it. But it's one of the hardest things to cultivate, especially I've learned as men.
Perfect. Yeah. Because you hold men's retreats, don't you? And you do monthly, like you do
Yeah,
incredible things for men. And it's so, so needed, Nick. So needed for every age group. But so needed.
it is. It is. And I think it's that self-worth. When we get our self-worth from things outside of us, we run the risk of when life kicks us in the
Yeah.
parts we don't want to be kicked in, which it will, often for reasons out of our control. What we tend to do is we go even harder, and that is why we burn out.
Yeah.
Because we try and get control over something that actually we just can't ever get control over.
Yeah.
And we can't ever satisfy that that external validation. Whereas actually if we're brave enough, and I believe it is a courageous act, if we're courageous enough to go inwards and to shine a light on everything that's there and to find the right people for you to help you do that, which is just as important, to find your people that will sit with you and hear what you have to say and how you feel without it impacting them in a way where they're either going to try and fix you, offer solutions, tell you what someone over here's done, or point you to this Instagram page. All of that's well meaning, but actually, I found can be quite damaging because when your self worth isn't there, your inner critic, when it hears those things, and I hear this all the time, all it's going to do is say, see, you're shit. Why didn't you think of that? It
Mm.
just doubles down on the pain you're already in. And that's why I think one of the most important things any of us can ever do is just to learn to actively listen and hold space.
Exactly. Exactly. Because how many times have you heard of guys kind of, it takes a lot, doesn't it, to experience those feelings and not shut them out, not numb them out, that we've kind of, developed these coping mechanisms for. But how many times have you heard a guy say, I tried talking to my partner or whatever, and I, as you say, it's courageous, it's been incredibly vulnerable, and then that partner just says, oh yeah, I feel like that too, and I feel like this and this, or oh, you should do this. Now, I'm not criticizing them, that
No,
their
I hear you.
decision is their thing, that's their story. But when we're just looking at that one person who has gone, oh, I'm struggling, I think I need some help, and you naturally go to someone who's close to you in your circle, and then that's what's reflected to you. You're so right. You go to the place of, oh bloody hell, I should have this sorted, I should, you dismiss yourself.
I think you do. But also, there's something about struggle when we feel it and allow ourselves to feel it and allow ourselves to be vulnerable and share that with another person. Sometimes actually struggling is appropriate.
Yeah.
And just acknowledging that we are struggling can provide relief when we're witnessed in that experience. That's the gold. But it's that I think wellness, mental health, if that is more meaningful to you, is often viewed through the lens of, if I'm not good, then there's a problem that needs to be fixed. We never ask ourselves, is it appropriate that I don't feel good right now? So if I'm at work and I'm under pressure and I'm working hard and I'm managing a team and they've got their problems and I'm holding that and I've got my own shit going on and there are targets and pressures, I think it's appropriate that I'm not going to be at my best. And I think that should be normalized.
Should be normalized. Oh my God, it should be normalized. It's so true. It's so true. And it's that damn hustle culture again, isn't it?
I think so. And I think for me personally, I've come to believe that the hustle culture sits quite nicely alongside that getting validation from outside of ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I'm not against hard work at all. I'm not against striving. I'm not against ambition. I'm not against success and all of these other things that sit within that as well. Again, it's that duality, isn't it?
Yeah.
But when we put the standards so high where anything less than perfection means failure, I don't see how anybody over any length of time can live up to that. I just don't. In my
No.
experience, tell me.
And it's that they get caught in that burnout cycle, don't they? And
Yes.
this is where I get people DM me. I'm forever grateful for when people reach out, when they really feel connected to these interviews and podcasts, and they reach out to me, and they always kind of go, how many times did you burn out? Did you burn out more than once? And they're there going, please tell me you did. Which my answer is, hell yeah, I did. Because you have to go through, there's layers to it, isn't there, Nick? When you're doing this work, when you're learning to peel back those layers of people pleasing and no boundaries and no no self-love, there's layers to it, isn't there, Nick? And this is what you brilliantly do with your work.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. Because I've burnt out. I've lost count the amount of times I've burnt out, if I'm totally honest. And I'm okay with that. And I'm really glad to hear you say that too, because I think it can be, especially on social media, there can be a kind of narrative of, I was this thing happened, I did this, and now I'm okay, and you will be okay too, if you do this. And I'm not saying that can't be true.
Yeah.
But it's not what I see. It's not the norm.
Yeah.
I think we stumble and fail repeatedly, and if we can lean into that as not just normal but necessary in order to grow and learn, each time we stumble and fail, suddenly it becomes so much more easier to deal with.
Yeah.
because we're not judging it.
The judging. And this is why it's important for people to work with coaches like you, coaches like Jess, Joss, me, like of people who are still walking alongside those trenches. Yes,
Yeah.
I've grown. I'm a different person to when I was in my doctor's office, and they're like, no, it's not a heart attack, but you gotta bloody stop. I've grown from there. But
Yes.
Nick, I'm still, I will always be doing the work.
You and
And
me both.
I think those are the coaches I personally want to work with, want to
Yeah.
help me. You
Mm.
know, again, I'm not criticizing. Well, I am, aren't I? But when you're looking on social media and and no, actually, I don't know about you, but do you feel like a pressure to kind of be like, oh, I've got to get my shit together. I've got to have everything. Like I want to, because when you're a coach, you really want to just
Mm.
help people, but
Yes, you do.
their journey. It's their journey. We can help guide, we can hold a mirror, we can do this, but we are not responsible for their journey. And that's another loop, isn't it? I wasn't
Yeah.
go there, but yeah, it's made me think.
No, I hear you completely, and this is why it's so important because again, when we look at this stuff and wellness in a finite way, in an overly simplistic way, and you have that experience and it doesn't work for you
Yeah.
long term, even if you get short term results, there can be additional damage because of that. And I'm really passionate about that. So when I was reflecting and sharing with you on the first time I asked for therapy and I went to person-centered therapy and it was really valuable, it allowed me to restore enough of myself to go out in the world again and to believe I was more authentic, which is why I went completely left field into music, which had been a passion of mine that I never followed as a kid. And I thought through lyric writing, I can begin to be open and honest and vulnerable about my experiences. And with who I was at that time, that's exactly what I did.
Right.
Now, as I look back at nearly 50, part of it's a little bit cringy, and that's okay too. But I'm so proud of that person for really trying to step into his authenticity in the best way that he could.
Yeah.
So proud of him. And I carry him with me
Yes.
every day because of that, you know? I
Yeah.
do.
Yes.
So there's I agree there's layers to it. And definitely what I've come to believe is that everything is valuable, every experience is valuable. And even if we don't get what we want in terms of the outcomes, we pretty much always get what we need,
Ooh.
but we may not see it at the time. And we
Ooh.
certainly don't feel it.
Oh, blimey. That just might there. Yes, absolutely. And we know, don't we? It's painful, painful when you're in it. I get it. Like, and this is why, you know, when we're misaligned in life, when we're dealing with emotional kind of, trickiness, mental trick, like we feel it in our bodies. We really do. So we're sat here, we know the pain. We know it.
Yeah, viscerally. And I think when you've like 10 years after that, when I was 37 and I was contemplating my own life, because
Mm.
even though therapy, that particular kind of therapy gave me a lot of self-confidence and belief and that I was okay being who I was still a people pleaser. We didn't touch on that because I wasn't the beauty of person-centered is that it's led by the person. I take that approach with my coaching, philosophy and how I treat everyone as individuals. I think it's really important. I want to make that really clear. But at the
Mm.
same time, we only know what we know. So the minute I was away from the therapist's office, slowly I began to return back to all of the people pleasing conditioning that we've already spoken about on the podcast. So when when I got in another bad relationship, when I was burning out again at work, when I was emotionally exploding again,
Yeah.
it was like, well, I really am a failure.
Yeah.
Like really, really am a failure.
Mm.
And I'm forever grateful actually that I happened to be in an employment role then, which let me take time off to sit with that. And I knew I needed help. I just didn't know what help.
Yeah.
Because when you ask for help for the first time, it's never as difficult again.
Yeah.
It's horrendously difficult when you've never done it.
Mm.
But when you've done it, and then now I ask for help all the time. Like I need it.
Which is amazing. Which is
Yeah,
amazing.
it is. It
It
is.
it's interesting. And I don't know why. And we're going to talk about people pleasing. Maybe
Yes.
it's a real
Yes.
brilliant nugget for you. But you know, when you, I don't know if anyone else, maybe someone listening to this, but you know, when you're a chronic people pleaser and you become
Yes.
very good because of your upbringing, because of how life has shaped and molded you.
Mm.
I know I've seen with friends, it is possible to go and seek therapeutic help and actually stay in that role and just give the therapist what they need to know. What they like.
I know, and this was what by the time I'd entered my 40s and redundancy hit me, and I actually began. I saw a therapist for the first time in a preventative way, a
Okay.
positive way. That, do you know what I mean? It was like nothing's wrong. I'm actually quite happy that this has happened to me, and I'm excited about what I do next. But I want this to support me through this transition, whatever that might be. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Um, but nevertheless, what I realized quite quickly was, I don't know, I felt disconnected from my story in that room that time
Mm.
because of everything you just said. I knew what having a breakthrough was like. I knew the things that you would say and how you would feel and how they would feel and how to create that rapport and that it became mechanical. So outwardly, I'd walk out of there like congratulating myself that they feel good, that we've had a great session, and just be like, well, that was pointless.
I know. I know, but you're just on autopilot.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
go down the road of, why am I such a dick? Why am I self-sabotaging myself? And how many people
Yeah.
just get caught in the loop and you're like, oh yeah.
Yes, and I think but again, it's these stages of growth, isn't it? Like at that point, I could see the humor in my own experience.
Yeah.
Like the fear wasn't there and the shame wasn't there in the same way it had been for so many years because I'd begun to understand this about me. But then it was like, but I want to do something about this. I don't want to spend the rest of my life watching my life kind of unfold in a way that doesn't feel authentic, so that whatever experiences I end up having, some of which could be great,
Yeah.
because I did have all these great experiences leading up to that point,
Yeah.
as well as all the shit. But I just felt that that disconnect between how I feel inside and no one ever really knowing that,
Yeah.
and how I am connecting with other people in the world outside me, that was that lack of congruence I really wanted to just work with.
Mm.
And that passion's never left me once that really took hold of me. And that's really what I'm all about. If you work with me, I want you to develop the self-worth and confidence that how you feel in here is how you can be out there.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Which reminds me, you know, I hear you say that and I'm like, I can't help but think, Nick, like when you were a little kid, it sounds like you were playful, you were joyful, you were up for
Yes.
some cheekiness and some fun, and you were curious and you would explore things. So it makes sense, like the football and then going to the music career. Like there's an element of you that stayed aligned to you, but there's also an element that was molded and shaped to please others. And I just
Yes.
it's interesting, isn't it? And I'm hearing, I guess I'm just processing this in real time. I'm
Mm.
like, of course you would be the amazing guy who really starts to shake up the idea of people pleasing and it being linked to, okay, let's work on this, but then let's also look after this little inner child.
Yeah. For me, that's everything because, and I do say this a lot, and that was that second reel I think you were talking about,
Yeah.
is You know, there's a lot of talk about people pleasing because I believe it's so much more common
Yeah.
than we might believe. I really do. It's like everything else. There's a spectrum, and we're kind of all on it.
Yeah.
But if you are, especially if you're a chronic people pleaser, and you've been doing it for a long time, and you've been doing it in all areas of your life, as I was, yeah, a lot of the talk is about developing self-worth, and a lot of the talk is about starting to be wary of and not gaining so much validation outside of yourself. And it is about understanding your values and what are my needs, and putting that into practice through talking about boundaries, and then trying to maintain them, and saying no when you mean no and yes when you mean yes. All of that stuff I am here for. It's important.
Yeah.
But if you're listening to this and you're thinking, well, I might be a people pleaser, and you start going into to action and making those changes straight away, I think there's a good chance you're setting yourself up to fail. And when you fail, it's a whole level of pain.
Yeah.
But even if you don't fail, even if from the minute you start to make the changes, all this other stuff comes up.
Yeah.
So you might think, yeah, okay, I'm not going to people please with my boss anymore. I'm gonna close my emails, and I'm not going to look at them when work finishes. I'm going to make sure I have my lunch break, and you're going to set all these amazing intentions, and these are my needs, and I deserve this, and all of that's true. And you feel that energy. It's really empowering.
Yeah.
You feel change is possible. You feel like it's going to be a brave new world out there for me. And that's amazing. And then you start to put it into place, into practice. Boy, does it feel uncomfortable.
Oh, I know.
It feels unclenchingly challenging, because even if you set that boundary with your boss, say, you know what, I'm not going to answer your email if you send one at 9 o'clock at night. Is that okay? Even if they say yes, that's okay, you walk away from that conversation going, it's not okay. It's not okay. It's really not okay. And you are terrified that now you're going to get sacked, or you're going to like be thought less of. And it's like, oh my God, now I'm having to deal with all of these emotions and these feelings. How am I going to do that? Where's my empowerment gone? Where's my self-worth gone?
Yeah. And
And
you
and
feel
I went
so
through that.
alone.
Oh, in a way that you could never expect until you're in it. So how do you cope with that? Well, this for me is where that inner work comes in. And over the past 2 or 3 years, especially, I've reconnected with and continue to connect with versions of me of all different ages, including earlier adults.
Okay.
And the reason I do that is because when I now catch myself either people pleasing, which I still do sometimes, I catch myself, or thinking like I want to, the first question I now ask myself is, how old am I now? Right now? How
Mm,
old am I right now? And
okay.
sometimes I am 3 or 4, and sometimes I'm 26, just picking two random ages. And actually, that allows me to connect with that younger version of me, and just for a second, connect with the pain they felt
Okay.
by behaving in that way. And more often than not now, and as I said, I'm still learning every day, but more often than not, I can behave in a way which is going to serve me more than it doesn't. And
Mm,
and that for me is healing. It's not an end point. Doesn't mean you never people please again or think of people pleasing again, but you can carry all of this experience with you and put your arms around them and be the leader of your own life and choices, because you have reconnected with them, and you're not pushing them away and pretending they didn't happen, or thinking that, well, that's all done with. I'm now just me here in the age that I currently am, doing the things I'm doing, and that's it. Of course, you're all those things, but you're also all these earlier versions of yourself that you carry with you. I really believe that.
yeah. Yeah. Oh, Nick. I mean, again, you say that, and all I hear are these lovely, like, it's just cloaked in self-love and self-compassion, and just you know, and slowing down enough to sit and look at all of this. Because, you know, when you're a people pleaser, let's face it, you've been used to operating at such a pace where you don't even see your own needs. You're just like, okay, now I'm going to do this, and okay, so okay, fine, of course I'll answer this email at 9 o'clock, and if I ask okay to do it at 8, maybe I'll do it at 10 just to prove I'm really great. But you're moving at such a fast bloody pace, aren't you? And you know, I hold my hand up to that. But even just listening to you share that, I'm like, oh, like it's a different energy, I guess.
Yeah, it is. Paul Gilbert, who wrote a great book called The Compassionate Mind, talks about 3 emotional systems that we have.
Okay.
We have a drive system, which is when it's working as we want it to. That is our ambition. That is our motivation. That is what gets us out of bed in the morning and makes us want to achieve and make our lives better for ourselves. We have a threat system, which is the kind of fight, flight, freeze, fawn, flop response.
Yeah.
Which is sometimes when real things are happening outside of us that cause us to get into that response, but sometimes we create it for ourselves with what we perceive. And that's what people pleasers do. They perceive there to be threats.
Yeah.
But there's also our grounding, soothing, affiliative system. Now, for me as a people pleaser, and I think to a certain extent, generally in the modern Western world, we focus on drive and all of that good stuff. That's kind of how we're set up to operate as a society, and individually within a society, and collectively as well in the workplace. But we feel those threats, and what we tend to do is take actions to go back into drive, and then we feel threats, and then we go into drive, and then we go threats, and then we go into drive. Now, over a period of time, if that's all we're doing, and we're not engaging with our soothing system, we're not finding relaxation, we're not finding that rest and digest, all of that good stuff in that drive system suddenly becomes pressure, targets, having to be perfect, all of that kind of counterintuitive stuff.
Yeah.
And that's where the road to burnout is for me. And that's why, regardless of what's happening outside of us, if we can tune into and learn to tune into what's going on within us, and learn to love and accept it, even if it's really difficult and shitty and horrible to experience, if we can learn to do that, we can actually find a bit more relaxation within our nervous system, which can then allow us to tackle all of this pressurized stuff in a way that's much more aligned with the reason why we started doing it in the first place, that ambition, that drive, that motivation. So for me, that's a really simplistic model to think, am I going to here and here and here and here? And by the way, as well, just one brief thing, because I'm really passionate about this. Sometimes we think we're relaxing, but actually we're not. We're threat, drive, threat, drive, threat, drive. I watched Baby Reindeer the other day.
I haven't seen it yet.
Okay, I'm not going to say anything about it. And there's other TV shows I watch, which I love, and I think I'm relaxing, but I'm not. My nervous system is between threat and drive, threat and drive, threat and drive.
Oh, that's such a good point to make. Yes.
Same with gaming.
Oh my God, that's such a good point to make.
Yeah.
Yes. And it's recognizing it's going to that point of, you know, this situation, am I reacting to it or responding to it? The responding part of us is that higher self, isn't it? And it's that realizing that, 2 hours gaming or 2 hours watching, or 2 hours listening to a murder podcast. Is that relaxing you? Yeah.
I know.
Get caught up, almost addicted.
Yes, absolutely. And again, when you've been a people pleaser or you're in that cycle, you do get addicted to it.
Yeah.
In some way, even if that word doesn't resonate with you, like the repeating of those patterns.
Yeah.
For me, it's the same as if you have a workplace that you go to and you drive there every day, you know, the first day you drive there, you're going to have the sat nav on, you're not sure where to go, you're really vigilant. After you've been there 5 years, you don't even remember the journey there. And
Yeah.
for me, this is exactly the same. We're really clever, adaptable beings. We
Yeah.
really are.
Yeah.
And when that works for us, it's amazing. But it can be counterintuitive. And that's why self-awareness is everything. Now, if you can put in hand with self-awareness, self-compassion, and understand
Yeah.
that we're all going to fall into these old patterns from time to time, and it's okay. And the idea of kind of coaching or therapy or any kind of wellness practice isn't to get rid of these things forever. The minute you spring clean and deep clean your house, it starts to collect dust. The minute you finish, the minute. And I think wellness is the same, you
Oh,
know.
I
And,
love that. It's so true. We have, yes. Oh my God, Nick. This is such a good conversation. Oh,
no, I appreciate you. But by the way, if you're listening to this and you're thinking, wow, man, this guy sounds like he's got it nailed. Let me just tell you what happened after I binged the other night, Baby Reindeer. I was shaking in bed. Like my body was shaking, literally, of tension. And even though I had genuinely got so much out of watching it on so many levels, and I was absorbed and engaged, and I was blown away by it.
yeah.
Afterwards, there's no way I'm going to get to sleep
Yeah.
straight away. And just bless her, she's like, do you need a hug? I'm like, no, I don't know what I need. I'm just like absolutely shot to pieces.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
then, so it's not that I don't, do you know what I mean? I have these experiences still. I really want to be clear about that. But I think being able to talk about them and laugh about them and normalize them
Yeah.
is that's the gold. Because then that critical voice, that judgment, that bit where you feel shame, that bit ceases to exist, or certainly just loses its power.
Yeah. And as a coach, you know, that I would want to be coached by you because there's that connection. There's that it's real. I still do it. It's not that because a lot of burnt out people need to step away from those perfectionist
Yeah.
tendencies and that kind of maybe they've become used to having an authoritative figure with an authoritative voice being like, you need to do this, this, and this, which we're like, okay, yeah, we'll do that. It's so refreshing and so wholesome and amazing to be able to connect to someone like you who's like, oh my God, baby reindeer left me shaking in bed 11 o'clock at night. Because it's
Literally.
real.
Yes. That's it. That's it right there. It's real.
Yeah.
And I think there's nothing that lights us up more as human beings when we're being real
Yeah.
and when we get the privilege of connecting with other people that are also being real. There's such power in that.
Yes. Because you feel it in your body when you're connecting with someone that you're like, oh, they're just being themselves. They're just being real. Like it's so, oh, yeah.
Honestly, so the work I do outside of my private coaching one to one, like if I'm going into a business and I'm working with a team or any organization, this is the stuff I talk about and get them to reflect on and try and create an environment where they can be vulnerable enough to start to share some of this stuff with each other.
Yeah.
And when they do that, the bonds that they form of trust and care and understanding about how they show up at different times of the day when different pressures are on, it's still professional, but it's real.
Yeah.
It's real.
Yeah. And
And
it's
I haven't.
yeah, it's I guess it's championing people being real and it's encouraged
Yeah,
them to try and think of a better word than control. It's encouraging people to take ownership. I don't know, you probably think of a better word, like of their life, because you know, I'm sat here
mm,
and, like I've had many times, Nick, where at work, you know, that whole people pleasing side of me, that wanting to do that ambitious part, overachieving, all the burnt out
Mm.
people are like sticking their hands up left, right, and center to all of those. Um, you just you're so used to abandoning yourself, you don't even think to consider yourself or your needs. And it's when we're real, it's reminding us that, oh, you've got needs. Look after
Yes,
them and look after you. But when you're in a culture where that isn't recognized,
it's
oh,
tough. It's
it's
really tough.
hard. Yeah.
And I think that's why championing yourself and learning how to do that in a way that's meaningful to you
Yeah.
will probably give you a better chance of spending more time in environments which are going to allow those beautiful traits of whoever you actually intrinsically are to come to the surface and be valued. And I think very often in more toxic environments, or even if they're not toxic and they're just environments which just don't suit you, we
Yes.
make it about something lacking with us instead of even thinking, well, maybe this just isn't right for me.
Yeah. Yes. Oh my God. Yes, yes, yes. Because the minute you're more rooted within yourself, it gets a lot easier, doesn't it? To sense. You don't even have to like intellectualize and
Mm,
rationalize this cognitively. You can just sense. Your whole body feels better. If you're going for an interview for a job and you're like, I know, I really hope I get it. I know. And you know you're in that position of you're striving, you're trying to
yeah,
impress people. Whereas if you go and you left an interview and you're like, I really like them. I think they'd be
yeah,
fun to work with. That's the one you need to be going for. But I, hand on my heart, admit I have definitely known I shouldn't go and work in those places. But part of me, which let's face it, it's probably the inner you, isn't it? Is going, I'm going to prove them wrong. I'm going to prove to them that I'm great. I'm going to prove to them that I know my stuff. I'm going to, oh my God, no wonder I burnt out.
I know. And there's something when you said that there, what I felt was almost like a dot 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 dot, and then I will be worthy.
Oh, yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes. And it loops back to when you're looking for validation outside of yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Whereas actually, if you can go into that and think, well, I'm worthy, regardless of whether this environment's right for me, whether these people like me or not, all of that stuff,
Yeah.
whatever happens to you, you're going to be more in touch with what you next need to do. That's the point, to whether you decide to stay and work in that environment or not. And by the way, this is the gold of being a people pleaser for so long. You don't lose that hypervigilance. You don't lose that ability to read people. You don't lose all those soft skills.
Yeah.
They become your superpower. It's how you choose to behave. That's where the work is, but then that's where the superpower can really take effect. And I think that,
Oh, yeah.
you know,
I love
it's
that you say that, Nick. I love that you
mm,
say that because I had I've like I'm high energy, like I'm kind of, and I've always been this way. Um and when you live in a different country where the culture is different, you realize how different you are.
how
Interesting.
you
Interestingly, um, I had a friend and she meant it. Listen, she meant that full of love, right? But I hadn't seen her for a while. So obviously I'm like, yes, all excited. We start talking and we're talking about work and people pleasing, whatever. And she said,
mm,
yeah, people pleasing, like Flic, like you're always happy and up here. You gotta change that. Right. So instantly I noticed meanness from love. But I went, it was a sting for me. And it was a
mm,
sting because it reminded me of when I was a kid and I was always told to like, you're too much, calm down. Like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and so I love how, and I'm thinking, actually, I've done a lot of work on people pleasing. This is just me who champions people doing well. Like nothing lights me up more than seeing someone do well. And I'm not going
Yeah.
to apologize for it. I just
No.
get really happy seeing good people do well. makes my
Mm.
day. So an element of me is like, okay, well, that's her story. I don't need to, and I've got my story. But it did make me think. And I thought, oh, wow, there's still that part of me that doesn't feel seen for who
Mm.
I am. And when
Yeah.
we're not seen for who we are, it can put us back in that threat response, can't it?
Yeah, exactly. We're back as that little earlier version of ourselves that you so
Yeah,
beautifully said. It's and that is normal. That's the thing. It's normal that that happens.
yeah,
It's what happens next within us and what we choose to do outside of us. That's that's the whole ball game for
yeah.
me.
And so these soft skills, we take them with us and they become our superpowers. I
Yeah,
love that
without a
you say that. I love
doubt.
that. Because again, your whole story, your whole life's journey, I'm listening to it and I'm like, oh my God, Nick, it's because you were meant to be here right now doing this work, changing lives.
I know, and look, I think I genuinely mean it when I say like I turned 50 later this year, and I genuinely feel that in so many ways my life is just beginning. I
Yeah,
really do.
yeah,
And that's not in any way, but it would that wouldn't be happening without everything that I've been through. This is already the most meaningful thing that I've ever done in my life, and will continue to be for the rest of my life.
yeah,
And I think I always dreamed that I would find a purpose, whatever it is. I thought it was football when I was very young,
yeah,
but this is it. And I wouldn't be able to do this if I hadn't had all of those experiences. And I think
no,
it's the same for anybody that's doing anything aligned and
yeah,
soul-led. I really believe it.
yeah. It's interesting. I've got a 17-year-old and another one who's going to be 15 soon. So,
Mm,
interesting raising teenage boys. And
yeah,
my eldest is like, what am I going to do? Like, what am I going to do in my life? And I'm like, "Oh, I so know what you're going to be doing, but I'm not going to put my expectations on him, right? So I'm like, darling, you're going to have many careers in your life.
mm,
Like the teacher who's standing there saying, pick one, pick one. I don't want you to listen to that one anymore. I want you to follow your gut because, we will have many careers in our lives. And I'm
mm,
thinking, okay, like you had your football experience, you did this, you did your music. I'm thinking of you when you were a kid, and I'm like, you were just being you, Nick. Like you have
yeah,
this creative side in you, and all of those, because when you're playing football, you're reading people, you're reading the
yes,
like it, and like seconds, like it's insane how you have to react very, very quickly. People don't appreciate this, and you're managing a nervous system on that pitch
mm,
without even thinking about it. That
yes,
all of those skills, yes, there was, I love how you say the duality. Yeah, there was the shadow side of it. But oh my God, look at this gold and look where you are today. It's
yeah,
bloody
exactly.
amazing.
It is, and I can sit in the fact that I'm proud of myself, and that
Yeah,
feels good to say and actually feel it. And
yeah,
all those little earlier, younger versions of me, right from the little boys all the way through to me 10 years ago.
yes,
I can talk to them, and I have. That is part of the work I do on myself. The part of the power of holistic practices like breath work and somatic practices allow me to connect with my body and to feel the things that I've struggled to feel for all these years, and
yeah,
to reconnect with those versions of me, and to be able to say to them, look where I am now, look where we are now,
I know.
and you're welcome here, come here, you don't have to stay where you are, you don't have to
Yes,
stay in all of that challenge and pain and feeling not good enough. You don't have to do that. You can come with
yes.
me, part of who I am now, because I need you.
And the self-compassion is so different to toxic positivity, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's just that, it's just, and that's when we get to that point, and that's when we get to have self-validation. We don't look for it from other people, and it's so liberate. You have no idea until you stand in
yeah,
that square. You're like, oh, oh, oh. this feels good.
It's true. It's true. And it continues to grow. That's the thing, because the more people we meet, the bigger us, because we lose people along the way as well.
Yeah.
When we make these changes, it's important to say that. I've
Yes.
lost a lot of people. But I do think that kind of, even connecting with you here today, I feel like I know you better as a
Yeah.
person.
Yeah.
This is a podcast, but it's also two people getting to know each other.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And I think that's massive. And the more we do that, and the more spaces we go into where that's welcomed, and we encourage others to do the same,
Yeah.
like that's incredible. I love it.
Yeah. Oh my God, Nick, I feel like that's the perfect place to land on this incredible interview. I feel like I could talk to you all day.
Thank you for inviting me again. Like, I've really, really enjoyed getting to know you and having this chat. Like, it's been amazing.
Yeah. Well, it's the sort of thing I say, to all my guests, like, we will never know the person this really impacts. Like, when I put these
Mm.
out, it's interesting. Some people pitch me and they're like, what are your numbers? And I'm like, oh, no, I'm not about that. I'm only going to interview people I like, and I ain't about numbers. Because
Yes.
I really do believe this conversation is going to go out there. We won't know the
Mm.
person it really impacts, but it's going to impact them. It's going to impact their partner, their kids, like the ripple effect becomes huge, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And again, I think that's letting go of any expectation of outcome is part of everything we've spoken about. And
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
trusting it's going to go where it needs to go.
Yes.
Amazing.
Oh my God, Nick, thank you for this. This has been amazing. It really
Thank you.
has. You're so calming as well. I feel like really relaxed. So at the end of conversations, I've been asking guests like
Mm.
quick fire, light-hearted questions, because we all answer differently, don't we? So I was
Yeah, I'm here for it.
wondering, like, on your dodgy, tough days, do you opt for move your body or move the remote?
Probably move my body to pick up the remote.
I love it. Done. Okay, bag of almonds or bag of Maltesers?
Maltesers all day long.
I love Maltesers. Like, oh, nothing like a pint of tea, not even a cup of tea. Pint of tea, Maltesers. I'm done.
No, I'm here for that.
Yeah. Ask for help or happy to hermit.
I'd say ask for help.
That's
I
brilliant.
would say ask for help.
That's my aim. That's my goal to get, but like for it to become like innate within me, just natural. And then what's the one self-compassionate thing you're going to do today that your future self will thank you for?
I am going to check in with this guy.
Oh, look at him. I was reading his like football report on your Instagram, and I was just like, oh, little boy.
No. Yeah, just check in with them and ask how they've had this experience and what their week's been like. I think like I've been doing that for a while now, in between the end of the working week and the weekend, and just kind
Really?
of
That's so cool.
yeah, yeah, just checking in. Like, is there anything any of you want to say, and
Oh,
just
I
try
love
and allow
that.
them to come to the surface and just express themselves. Like it's something I've learned from some IFS therapy that I've had.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, it's great stuff. Like, so that's what I'll be doing, which my future self will definitely thank me for.
yeah. Oh my God, that's amazing. I'll put in the show notes where people can find you, because you run men's retreats, you do monthly circles, don't you, for men? Like, you do a lot of amazing work. And obviously follow you on Instagram, because I love your Instagram posts. They're just so real. I love that. Nick,
Bless
thank
you.
you
Thank you.
so much for this conversation. This has been amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, Flic, thank you for inviting me on. Like, genuinely, it's been like an amazing way to end the week. It really has. I'm just going to take the best energy into the weekend. So thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. It feels like such a wholesome place to land on. I'm like, whoo, all good. We're all good, guys. We're all good. We're just doing it.
Absolutely. I'm off to get some Maltesers.
Done and dusted. Perfect. Thanks, Nick. You take care.
You too. Thanks, Flic.